Hi everybody! Let me see if I am on okay. Let me know if you can hear me. Perfect. Alright. Welcome, welcome. Let me know how you are doing today. Let's see. Oh, I see a couple hearts. Hi guys! Can you hear me and see me alright? You might hear a little bit of a buzzing because I do have the microwave on in the background right now, but hello, hello. How's everybody doing today? All right, we got some people jumping on now. Hello, hello. Welcome in. Write in the comments where you were watching from. Let's all get to know each other before we get started. I am just preheating my Isomalt, so I'm going to check on it really quick. Put it in for a little bit longer. Hello, thanks for the hearts and the likes, guys. How is everybody today? Is everything look okay? Everything sound all right? Can you guys hear me okay? Hey, Caroline from the UK. All right, we're gonna be making some fun potion bottles today, guys. Are you excited? I'm excited to show you. It's gonna be super awesome. Got lots of different versions, and I'm going to show you all of the tips and tricks to make the different kinds of bottles. Alright. Perfect, perfect. Hi from Ireland. Thanks for watching. Okay. Alright, I'll show you guys a couple of the potion bottles while we are waiting for everybody to jump on. So we got our round potion bottle here. Hey, Bev. Our mini beaker with the little bubbles in there. We also got our mini potion jar here. That beaker is definitely one of my favorites. Hey, Jessie Ann. We have our test tube, which I really love because it has this two-tone look, but the two-tone, instead of being upright, is actually on its side. So I'm going to show you how I achieve that as well. So if you want any of your potion bottles actually pouring out, you can see it has that really cool sort of dimension to it, being on its side. Hey Lori, hi Carol Ann, welcome in guys. Alright, and then of course we have our eyeball jar, the star of the show today. I'm super excited to show you guys how I got those eyeballs in there. I know I've been teasing it a little bit with my potion jar series, but I wanted to wait till the live to show you guys how I did it, because I just think that it's so much fun, and it's perfect for Halloween, which is coming up so fast. I cannot believe that it's already only 2 weeks till Halloween, so lots of fun, spooky stuff happening. Alright, I'm going to check on my microwave really quick. Make sure that's looking good. Alright. Hi Cindy, welcome. Okay, we will get started. You guys can hear me alright, right? Everything's sounding good, looking good. Just want to make sure before we get started. Alright. So yeah, I'll be showing you all of the different kinds of bottles today, if they are layered in different colors, if you want them pouring in certain directions, and also how to inset other decorations inside the bottles, which is really, really fun. Thanks, Carolyn. I love the eyeballs too. Hey, Terry. How are you? Okay, good. Bev says you can hear fine. Perfect. Alright, then we will get started. So, thank you guys so much for tuning in today for our Halloween Isomalt Potion Bottle Live Playdate. Let me know if you're going to be following along as we work in the comments, or if you're going to be watching and then working on it later. But either way, I would love to see your projects if you do recreate this Playdate project, so make sure to tag me or to post them in the Simi Torch Team group, because I would definitely love to see your interpretations of it. I'm basically going to show you a whole bunch of different ways that you can make the potion bottles, and I wanted this to be really creative and fun so that you can pick your own colors and your own kind of stylistic choices and how you decorate them and things like that. So I'm going to be showing you all the tips and tricks for the technique and to make the potion bottles with Isomalt, but I cannot wait to see you guys' interpretation creatively of the pieces, because there's so many ways you can decorate these, there's so many ways that you can customize them and change them up, so it's going to be super fun. Hi from Missouri. Hello, welcome in. All right, so I'm going to turn my camera down here in a second, but like I said, we are going to be making all of our potion bottles. I'll show that eye bottle one more time. Those are actually Isomalt eyes inset in the bottle, so they are 3D eyes. If you guys are in the Torch team, you'll see my post that I did yesterday about making all of the eyeballs for this project. I have a bag of eyes back here, which I feel like is very spooky. So I think I made about 24 or 26 of these for how full I wanted my jar to be, but of course you can change that up, and I'm going to be showing you how to make the eyes as well if you are just getting started with your project today. So, hey Evelyn, hey Lynette. Alright, so I'm going to tilt the camera down, so just give me 1 second as I turn you guys to the map so that you can see what is going to be going on today. And I just got to wait for my iPad to catch up to make sure that you can see everything all right. Let's go back up just a little bit. And I might have to move over this way. I just want to make sure it's all as perfect as we can get it here. Alright, I think that looks good. What do you guys think? Does that looking okay? Alright. Cool. Okay, so I do have my iPad set up here, and that way I can see your comments, and Mom will be over here too in a little bit. She's just sharing it for me. Yes, I do like yellow, if you couldn't tell. Yellow is my favorite color. Alright, hey Tina, how are you? Alright, so let's get this going today. So I'm going to grab my Isomalt from the microwave. Alright, so we just melted the Simi Isomalt tiles for 30 seconds and then 15-second intervals in the microwave until it came to a boil. It's important to get that nice rolling boil to make sure that all the air is boiled out and you're left with crystal clear Isomalt. So you do want to get it to a nice boil, and then I let it settle so you can see it's not boiling anymore. So after it comes to a boil, I just let it cool for a few minutes at room temperature, and then it is going to be ready to use. So you can see it's nice and clear. The only bubbles that we have are kind of stuck to the bowl, so that's going to leave us with nice, super realistic eyeballs. Now, I have done a couple projects with the Isomalt eyes before. These are in conjunction with Sugar Geek Show. So Sugar Geek Show designed these eyes, and we put them together with the molds, and we sell them so that they do match together. So we have our eyeball designs here, and then we also have our eye mold. Now for this project, I'm using the 1/2 inch eye, so that's the small size. We also have the large size, which is a 1 inch when it's all done and created. So depending on what you wanted in your jar and how big your jar is going to be, you can change that up, but I wanted it to look kind of packed full of eyeballs to give it that really creepy look, so I did the small one so I could do more. But if you use the large eye, you can do that. You just want to make sure that you make less of them, which, you know, can be nice as well if you don't want to have to make quite as many as I did. But it really didn't take too much time. I think I took like an hour or two just kind of doing other things in between while they were cooling, and I made all my eyes. So I cut them out from the eye sheet. So this is an icing sheet. We use the icing sheets for the eyes so that it's nice and thick, and it's also an opaque background. You can see it's not see-through like the other cello sheets and things that I use for other projects. So it's going to really make the colors pop and add a really nice background to the irises. Okay, hey Donald! Alright, yes, and please don't forget to share, guys. Share this live stream with any groups that you're in or any of your sugar friends. Share it on your page. Alright, so you can see I just cut out 2 of the eyeballs. I'm going to be using greens and purples for my project. I just think that that's very spooky and Halloween, but as you can see, there's lots and lots of different colors you can choose from. There's even like cat eye or like dragon eyes, and then there's also some rainbow ones. There's some zombie eyes that don't have the pupil in there, which are really cool, so you get lots of options. But I'm going to use these green ones. And like I said, I'm just going to make a couple quick eyes to show you how to do it if you're not familiar with the eye process, and then we'll jump into how we use them with the jar. Alright, so I have my clear Isomalt here, and I melted it, like I said. I'm just going to fill it up. You don't have to use this big of a bowl. I just have this much for the jar, or the potion bottles later. But I'm just going to fill it up between 1/3 to 1/2 of the way in one eye first. Okay, so just a little bit in there. It's not all the way full. You want to make sure that you torch away any surface bubbles before you lay the sheet in. So I just give it a little zap to make sure there's no bubbles that'll get trapped under the icing sheet. And then I'm going to carefully, you can use tweezers if you'd like, set the eye sheet in there face down. Okay, so I just set that right down and in there. And then I'm going to do the same thing for the other eye. So again, I'm not filling this all the way up with clear. I'm only filling it about halfway. Okay, or a little less than halfway. You want to try and get them about even as well, so that they look the same. If you're doing, for this it's not as big of a deal, but if you're doing actual eyes for like a creature or a bust or something like that, you want the eyes to match, of course. And then I'll just use my silicone tool or toothpick to make sure that they're pushed into the Isomalt and that they're centered. And we want to let that cool and harden a little bit before we fill it back over with the white Isomalt for the whites of the eyes. So we're encasing that image in the middle of the Isomalt, which adds a really beautiful depth into the eyes to make them look hyper realistic. But we don't want to pour that right away because it is still liquid right now, so the eye sheets could move. So we want to just let that cool, and usually I find by the time I melt my white Isomalt and it's all ready to go, I have Isomalt strings here, then it is usually cool enough to pour. So I kind of preheat my Isomalts before we start. So I'm just going to pop them in for another 30 seconds or so just to get them nice and liquid again. Okay, but again, you can see that is all ready to go. Alright, and let me know if you guys have any questions. I'm looking over the chat. Hey, Rebecca. Hi, Amy. Alright, so just pouring those, and then we're going to fill over the backs of them with white Isomalt. So again, that's going to encase that eye sheet, and because it is the white backing on the icing sheet rather than the transparent cello sheets or the translucent transfer sheets, then that's just going to make them pop a little bit better and make them look more realistic. Alright. So, I have my white melted. I'm just going to fill the rest of the way up in the mold. And again, I'm using pretty large amounts of Isomalt here just because we're going to be using a lot of it later for the bottles. But you don't have to use quite this much since you can see how small these are. They are not very heavy at all. So I just filled it the rest of the way up. I just like to pop any back bubbles if they have them with the torch again. And then we have our eyes. So these are the small size, so they will only take probably about 5 to 10 minutes for them to cool all the way down, depending on the temperature of your room. So you can go ahead and put those off to the side, and then you'll just make those in rounds. I'll be taking these out to show you how to get them crystal clear in about 5 or 10 minutes, so I'm just going to put them off to the side. But in the meantime, I will grab my bag of eyes here. Like I said, I made, I think, about 24 of these or so, and that's what we'll be using to put inside the jar. Okay, everybody good? Anybody got any questions? So I'm heating up my next color of Isomalt, which is what I'm going to use for the jar. So we'll move our eyes off to the side. Now I'll show you this eye jar one more time here so that we can kind of look at it as we start working. So as you can see, I used a colored Isomalt for around the eyes. So the actual jar itself is a color of Isomalt. What I did for this color is I actually used our amber, so our newer amber color that we came out with, and that is going to be perfect because it kind of looks just like a gross eyeball juice in there. It just created a really kind of creepy color that I really loved to suspend the eyes inside of it. But I did not use the amber straight. I didn't use it at full intensity of the color because I thought it would be a little bit too dark. Since this is such a thick bottle, it would be very, very dark, and you may not see the eyes as much. So what I actually did is I mixed half or 1 part amber with 1 part clear Isomalt, and that just lightened it up. And I would recommend that for any of the colors unless you already have a pre-mixed really, really, really light colors. Yeah, exactly, Jessie, I'm like formaldehyde. So I would recommend doing something that is lighter in color and just slightly tinted, but again, I just wanted it to look extra spooky, so I used the amber. But you can color your own Isomalt from scratch if you would like to, using airbrush color mixed in or powdered color. I wouldn't do powdered color for this specific project just because you want it as clear as possible, but you can for projects that you want more solid. So like when we do the beaker, this is actually our jade color, but it's a luster dust. So you see how it's not really see-through, but it is a beautiful luster and it's more opaque. Okay, so that's what powdered colors are going to give you. You just never want to mix in gel colors, because gel colors will break down the Isomalt. So if you want a transparent color, you want to go with airbrush colors, or use it pre-colored. So if you already have some of our pre-colored Isomalt, that will work too. Again, just make sure it's either diluted with some clear Isomalt or it's a really, really light color. So I brought my 1-to-1 mixture of the clear Isomalt and the amber Isomalt to a boil, but you can use any color you want. I mean, this could be really cool if you did it in like a gross like limeish green color. You can do purple, you could do yellow, or even like a blue, almost look, you know, kind of sort of chemical look to it.
Pickled eyes.
Ew, pickled eyes. Gross.
Yeah, Donald can't wait for CI and making these because you guys are going to help with the Sugar Screams installation.
Yeah, we are going to be making some bottles, Donald Joyner and I, for the Sugar Screams installation. So make sure if you're at CI to look out for those at the booth. It's going to be so amazing. They're creating some incredible pieces for that.
Terry'd like to know, would the airbrush orange be too bright?
For the amount of Isomalt that we're doing, I think if you only did one drop, it would be okay. But if you are worried about that, I would just do a toothpick dip of color instead of doing one whole drop. But I think because we are using a pretty large amount of Isomalt for this jar, it would be fine. If you're doing a smaller amount, like to do the mini jar or something like that, then it might be too intense. It kind of depends on how much clear you have, how much color it's going to take to make it dark, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm just letting the bubbles settle of that. You saw it kind of came to a boil, and now we're letting it cool. And while we let that settle, I will show you how we're going to get the eyeballs in here. All right, so this is our eye jar mold. Or our jar mold, I should say. It's not just for eyes, but this is our potion jar mold. This is one of my favorites of our potion bottle collection, but we do have a bunch of different potion bottles in the new bottle collection. They're not just for potions. You can use them for other stuff too. I have some projects planned for that, but you can see we have the round one, we have the small one, and you can do this with any of the jars. So like we did the kit for this project, an option of which jar you wanted, and you can use the eyeballs with any of the jars. I mean, they would even fit, you couldn't fit as many in the small ones, of course, or you may need more if you're doing a larger jar, but you really could do this in any of the jars or bottles or anything that you were going to do. Alright, thank you. Yeah, we also have the beaker. That would be super spooky if you did like a beaker full of eyeballs. Alright, so we have the two parts here, right? What we want to do is we want to actually inset these Isomalt eyes that we made into the Isomalt. But to do that, we have to be careful of a couple things. We need to be careful that they are going to be not melted, of course, because this is Isomalt being poured over Isomalt, and we don't want to melt the pieces, the eyes that are in there, and just have them become like a marbleized liquid eye, even though that would probably be super gross. It might be kind of cool, but we do want to kind of retain the eyeball shape. And also, we have to make sure that these are evenly spaced. If we just kind of dropped these in here, we wouldn't really know where they're going to go and what direction they're going to look. So we do want to just be mindful of that. So I have a couple of tips for how we're going to do this. All right. Now, if you guys saw my last live stream, which was insetting the images for these bug lollipops, the amber lollipops, and also the snow globes, you could do that. If you just wanted to inset some images, you can go back and check out those tutorials. I have them on my YouTube and on my Facebook and Instagram. But so you can't just do edible sheets, and you wouldn't have to worry quite as much about them melting or anything like that. But I really wanted this to be 3D. I didn't just want to put an image in of eyeballs. That would be very fast, and it would be very efficient if you wanted to do a quicker version of this, but because I just really wanted it to look more real, I wanted that 3D sort of look rather than having a flat image that you don't see when you turn on its side. Alright, so what we're going to do is we are actually going to pour some Isomalt into the halves of the jar, and we're going to spread it around the edges, okay? And then we're going to inset our eyes, and then we have some other steps too, but we're going to start out by just filling the sides. So I do want to be mindful of this opening at the top of the jar. I don't want to spill the Isomalt out. I'm just focusing on the main area here. Okay, now as you are working with the Isomalt, remember that it is very, very, very hot, okay, especially in larger amounts like we are using today. It's around 300 degrees Fahrenheit or 150 degrees Celsius, so you do not want to stick your finger in it, you don't want to get it on you. I highly recommend wearing gloves, usually a cotton glove and then a nitrile or latex glove layered on top of that is going to buffer the heat and protect your hands, so be very, very careful as you are working with it, but as long as you are protecting your hands and, you know, being careful and paying attention, you shouldn't have any problem working with Isomalt. Even though it is so hot, we work with ovens and stoves all the time, right? Making cakes and cookies and baking, so you learn to work with Isomalt just like you learn to work with those safely. Okay, but don't follow my bad example and do wear the gloves. Alright, so what we're going to do is I'm going to pour just a little bit, maybe about 1/4 of the way, filling this cavity, and I'm going to tilt it back and forth carefully. Doesn't have to go all the way up to the sides, but I am going to get it as far as I can. And if it feels like I'm getting too thin of a coat on the outside, I may just add a little bit more. Okay. I'm just going back and forth, and we're creating that coating on the outside to look like glass. So I just want to keep tilting this back and forth. And I may even just kind of let it cool and then continue to do this, or I may continue to do this as it cools, depending on how patient you are. You can keep sitting here and rocking it, or you can come back to it in a minute or two and rock it again. But you see how it's just kind of letting it cool and thicken and building up the coating on the sides. We don't want it all to pool at the bottom. We want it to be as even as we can. So even if I'm just kind of adding more and more, and then carefully tilting, wearing your gloves, okay, to try and get it. It's not going to be perfect. You're still going to have some pooling at the bottom, but over time, we're just getting this to coat the outside of the mold. Okay, I'm going to let that sit for a minute or two while I do the other side, but you can just focus on one if you want at first. So I know that this one's going to take a little bit more than I first poured in that, so I poured a little more this time. And I'm just tilting back and forth. Alright. Okay, so I'll let that one set up for a minute while I switch back to this one. Kind of gives you things to do in the meantime. So we're coating, basically making the layer of glass on the outside of the jar, but we're still using the same color that it's going to be filled with. So you don't have to do this with clear. It's kind of the same thing as we would do if we put the mold together and we filled and drained it, but then you can't see where the eyes are going to go. Like I said, if you just drop them in, you kind of just have to figure out what it's going to look like after. You don't really get to control where the eyes are sitting. So this way, it's going to allow us to position the eyes exactly where we want. Okay, so I'm just kind of tilting carefully and coating the sides. I'm not really worrying too much about the bottom. It's mostly the sides. And letting these cool in between. You can even take your little fan to help speed this process up and just have that kind of creating some cooler airflow. Doesn't need to be blowing directly on it, but sometimes even just having a little bit more cooler airflow around can help. Okay. Be careful if you're doing them both at the same time. You don't want to not be paying attention to one while you're trying to do something to another. So you see how now when I pour it and when I tilt it, it's holding its shape a lot more and it's staying a little bit more even on the sides. It's not just immediately pulling to the bottom anymore. So that's good. So we want these to cool not all the way down because we want to kind of press the eyes into it to hold them in place, but we don't want it to be too hot that it's going to melt the eyes either. So I'm going to kind of it takes a little bit of like trial and error with this, but I am going to let it cool enough that it's really not super liquidy anymore, and it's more so like a very, very thick syrup. Okay, so I can tell now, especially with the first one that I poured, when I tilt it, it's really not pooling that quickly. So that's good. And then this one is getting there as well, especially now that I put the cool air on it. You never want to put Isomalt in the fridge or the freezer because the moisture and the condensation will affect it. Alright, so that's looking good. They look a lot more even now and it's starting to cool down. So what we're going to do is we're going to let those cool for just another minute or two before we put the eyeballs in. So the longer that you let this cool, the better the definition will be of the eyeballs themselves. But of course you don't want it to cool too much because then when you go to put the eyeball in, it's not going to stick. So I'm just going to take a handful of these, not all of them. You don't want to use all of your eyeballs for this. Leave maybe about half. Like, use half to 2/3 of your eyes, because we want to put some in the middle as well. Otherwise, you're just going to have eyeballs around the outside of the jar. Okay, so like I said, I just did some green and purple ones. But you could do any color. You could do rainbow. You can stick to all one kind. You could do red. Would look really scary. Alright, and you can do less eyeballs. It doesn't have to be a stuffed full jar. Maybe they've used the eyeballs for more things. Okay, so I'm going to start with the first one since that one's cooled more, and we're just going to place our eyeballs in face down. So the clear part is down, and we're just going to set these in carefully. Wear your gloves or even use tweezers for this, and we're just going to kind of push it into the surface of the Isomalt. Try and think about gravity, because right now it's sitting flat this way, but when it's finished, it's going to be sitting upright. So try and think about how gravity would be, and the eyeballs would, I would assume, I don't actually know, but I'm thinking the eyeballs would sink to the bottom. I don't think they float, but who knows. But I am kind of putting more of them to the bottom and less at the top. I guess unless this was more of like a gooey substance in the jar, not to get too gross, then maybe they would be more suspended in it. But that's all up to you. All right, also remember as you get to the outsides of the jar, you want to angle the eyes out because this is going to be 3D, so I don't want to put them all straight down. I want them to be out a little bit. And when we put the two halves of the jar together, we also don't want there to be a big strip in between the two halves that don't have any eyes. So you don't want them overhanging the top edge of the jar, but you do want to have it look a little bit more even. And we are going to add more to this, but this is just kind of our first layer. Okay. All right. So you see how I just kind of concentrated them more at the bottom, but then I had a couple going up, and you may want to add more than you think you need. That's what I found with mine, is that I wanted more than I thought that I would. All right. I don't really layer them like on top of each other unless you really want to at this point, because we're going to need to fill in the liquid, and if there's anything kind of stopping the liquid from filling in, you can get air pockets. So I really try and press these out to the edges and not really have a ton that will be blocking the space. And you can have them looking different directions too, like have some of them going down, some of them going up.
Are some of them floating?
You can have some of them floating, yeah. I did like one or two towards the top that were floating. And try and get like the same amount for each side, otherwise it can look like they're all sort of, like the bottle would be tilting, but it's not tilting, I guess. Again, just to kind of think of gravity and where the eyeballs would be going. You can also put some the other way if you want to. You don't have to put them all out because you will be looking through this. So there may be some in the back that are face, you know, the other way. You may want to see the backs of some of the eyeballs. So maybe I'll set one like over here that's looking out. Like that. Alright. We'll do like maybe one here. Okay, so I put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 in this side, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 in the other side. So just to give you an idea, but you don't have to do as many as me. It's just for reference. Okay, so you can see they're all just kind of stacked in there. We want to let this cool a little bit before we put the mold together to fill it the rest of the way up and add the rest of our eyeballs. Because if you put it together when it's too liquid, it's going to slump to the bottom, right? And it could stretch and distort the white of the eye, because you don't want anything moving around once you add more Isomalt. Otherwise, if it moves and stretches and we have two different colors of Isomalt, it could leave a trail of that color behind. So I'm just going to put this off to the side for now and put my fan over it to help cool it down. And we're going to do some other stuff in the meantime. All right. So next up, we are going to be filling in our small jar. So I'm going to show you how to do some different colors. So let me go ahead and heat up a little bit more Isomalt. Everybody doing okay? Any questions? Looks good. So I'm going to be using my mini jar mold for this one, just because it dries fast so I can show you the finished product. So for this one, because we're not putting anything inside of it, I'm going to just put them all together and double wrap the rubber bands. Now another thing that I wanted to stress when you're thinking about putting stuff inside of liquid Isomalt, if it's not a smooth surface, the Isomalt is going to melt the detail. So if you're trying to put like a brooch or a flower with like a pretty center or something inside, you might get the shape, the overall shape, but you're not going to get the detail like of the surface. So I don't use anything that's textured. These are totally smooth, right? So you're really just seeing the smooth circular shape of the eyeball. So that's why it works. But if you try and put anything detailed in, it's not going to preserve the detail if you're pouring liquid Isomalt over liquid Isomalt, because they will melt together. All right. So double looped those. I'm going to grab my next color. And also pop my amber color back in. so we can continue filling. So I'm using our jade green for this next one. This is the same that I used for the beaker, but you can do, again, whatever color combos that you want to with Isomalt you already have, or using the Isomalt from the accessory kit and coloring it. You can even do them clear if you wanted to. It'd look kind of pretty, like glass jars. So I brought it to a boil, and now we're letting it cool. And this one we're going to do some flat layers. Okay? So I'm going to do my first layer first, of course. And then we're going to fill up the next layer. So I'll give you kind of my tips and tricks to the different layers. First off, going to be letting those bubbles cool, because you don't want to pour this too hot. That will just encourage bubbles on the surface if you pour it too hot, because it'll make the silicone breathe and give off more air and attract more air. So the cooler that you pour Isomalt as a general rule with silicone molds, the less bubbles you're going to get. But of course you need it liquid enough to fill in evenly, so you don't want it to be too thick. It's all balance. Alright. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're just going to fill in as much as you want, depending on how much of the potion that the potion master has used. You may want more or less, but I'm just going to fill up maybe 2/3 of the way of the mold, so there's like an inch or so down from the top. And we're going to let that cool. If you're doing layers, you don't have to fill and drain, especially with these. They don't have as many places that air pockets can stick around. So I don't need to fill and drain it. I'm just going to fill it up, and then I'm going to let it cool. It doesn't have to be completely cold when you pour the next layer on. In fact, if it's a little warm, they'll actually bond together even smoother, but you don't want this to be liquid. Otherwise, when you pour the next color in, it's going to marbleize, which sometimes is what you're going for, but not for this. We just want it to look like liquid sinking to the bottom. Alright, so we're putting that one off to the side. We'll let it cool for a few minutes. Next, we're going to put our eye jar back together. So I have these two. Use a tool or something just to poke at the first color that you used. Make sure it's okay if it dents. Again, that'll help the colors bond together. You just don't want it to feel like it's going to slump or it's super liquid. Okay, so I'm putting the two halves of the mold together. Okay, don't forget our sleeve. Whenever you're using a sleeve on a mold, some molds have them, some molds don't, just depends on the shape and the size. You want to make sure that the seam on the sleeve does not line up with the seam on the mold. It should be offset so that if there were some leaking to happen, it would not come out the sleeve crease and onto you either. Okay, so just double wrapping these rubber bands on the sleeve, making sure everything's nice and lined up. And you see how because the eyes are to the outside of the mold, we have room to fill in the center. Okay. So we are going to grab our amber, and now we're going to fill in layers, adding more eyes as needed, because we don't just want the eyes again to look like they're on the outside. We want them to look like they're on the inside of the jar too. Okay. So after the Isomalt settles, we're going to fill maybe an inch or so of the mold, maybe 1.5 inches. And I'm going to place some eyes down in that. I don't worry about bubbles or anything because I actually think that it adds to the look. We're going to carefully take our eyeballs on tweezers, don't use your fingers for this, and we're going to place them in at different angles, especially on edges. So the seam, the area that the seam is, remember we don't really have any eyeballs there right now. So I'm going to make sure that I put some there so that it doesn't look like a big gap running up the side of the bottle. And then other than that, I'm just going to kind of push them around. This fills in a lot of space. So you're not going to need as much of the Isomalt that you would if you were filling this solid. You're not going to need as much as the liquid Isomalt. And it also helps it cool faster because it's going to add cool pieces into the liquid Isomalt. So it's like adding ice to a drink. Okay, so see how I just put those in there? And it doesn't matter how many you put in, but I think I put in like 4 of them. You can let that cool a little bit before you put your next layer on. I'm just going to go ahead and pour my next layer over top of it so that hopefully this will be cool enough by the time we want to unmold it. To show you guys. So I'll pour maybe another 1/2 inch to 1 inch of Isomalt. Pretty much just enough Isomalt so that it can completely encase the next layer of eyeballs. Okay. And just putting more in. And you may want to do less as you go to the top, remember, because we did less as we went to the top originally. So these will sink in a little. And I'm angling them at all directions, mostly looking outward, but as you see through the bottle, you'll get kind of different looks and different gazes of the eyeballs. Now I'm just going to fill some over the top, pretty much up to where the mouth or like the throat of the bottle starts, where it skinnies out. I'm not going to fill it all the way to the top because we can put some clear over the top of that. But I have 2 more eyeballs that I just want to layer in there. Maybe these ones are going to be floating. And I get some little cotton candy strings, so you might get that too, but they'll melt in. Okay, we're going to let that cool for a couple minutes before we put the clear on top so that that line of clear to amber is going to be defined. And then we are going to pour more clear over the top.
So did you see Amy's...
No, what's that?
Now, if we could just do a brain in a jar.
Oh, that would be so cool. I'm sure there's a way. That would be super cool. You could do as an icing sheet. You can do a Isomalt one. Even you can put fondant and gum paste and even royal icing when it's dry into Isomalt as well. You can pour Isomalt over it. So Dad says he'll donate his brain. All right. So while that is cooling, we are going to take out our eyes from before. Okay. So I'm just going to flex the mold and pop those out. They look really cool, but you can see that they are a little bit dull. That's just because, again, the silicone collects bubbles on the surface, so we want to get rid of that dullness, and we want to torch over the surface, not in your hand. So I'm going to do one, and then I'll hold them both up so you can see the difference. Just a little bit. You don't need to do very much, but you could probably already see how much that really brings it to life. Just makes it super crystal clear and really makes the colors pop as well. Once that cools, I can touch it and show you the torched one versus the one that is not torched. Kind of looks like he's staring at you right now. Okay, so I'm going to torch both of them. And we'll put those off to the side. Alright, let's check on our other jar here. This was our green jade jar that I poured before. It's still a tiny bit liquid, so I'm going to give it another minute. I'll put it in front of the fan too. We're going to reheat our amber. Okay.
Jessie Ann says brain and fingers.
Oh, fingers would be so gross. Or even fingernails in the package. Alright, so while the other ones are cooling, I'm going to show you the test tube as well next. So I'm melting down some more of my amber Isomalt. Just whatever I had left over of that amber mixed with the clear. Alright, now with the test tube, I wanted to show you something a little bit different. So, we are going to be pouring it on its side to have it spilling out rather than doing it upright, so that this one can actually be laying down and have that line. Okay.
Oh, they're having so much fun with this. Maybe Rebecca says maybe we could put some Isomalt bugs, frogs, and lizards.
Oh, I
too.
love it.
And Bev's like, gotta do dead man's toes.
Oh. Okay, expect to see all of these different variations, guys. I want to see them.
I think Nicholas's cockroach.
Oh yeah, the cockroach would be great.
That's just what Donald said. Sidney has the roach mold. Yes. Nicholas asked Sidney to make that last Halloween.
Yeah, we were like, really? A cockroach? He's like, yep. He was right. Alright, so to do this on its side, okay, we want to block off the ends because this one doesn't have the throat of the bottle. Sometimes they will, but if you want it pouring out of the jar, you could just let it pour out, but it doesn't work quite as well because then you can't really control what the pour looks like, and it also can block filling in the rest of the way if you have too much of it kind of at the top of the mold. So what we're going to do is we're going to block off that side. Now there's a few ways to do this, and I tried a couple different things before I figured out the easiest trick that I could have ever used, and that is using the other side of the mold, because it's the same height, right, because it's cut in half. So all I have to do is take the other half of the mold on the side that does not have the opening, okay, so not the side with this cutout, but the side that doesn't have the opening, and when you put them together, it's the exact size and shape to block that off. Isn't that cool? So what I'm going to do is set this one face up. You could do this one face down even since it's round so it doesn't move, okay, and you just put them together and it blocks off the end of the test tube. And that works with like any of our jars. If they're cut in half because they're the same size. So if I flip this one over, it blocks the top of that one off. So you can do that with any of these to help it not flow over, and you don't have to have, you could use flex forms, but sometimes they're not tall enough for big jars like this. So that is my easy solution. Still be careful because this could roll, so if you want to block it with something to kind of help it like stay in place, you definitely can. I'm going to do this kind of off to the side so that we can have other stuff happening at the same time. Alright. But we're going to pour. You can fill this up as much as you want depending on how much of the potion has spilled out.
Lori just ordered, did you see that one?
No.
A mini brain and a mini heart mold.
Oh gosh, that's so funny. The heart would be really cool in there. Okay, so see how because that other half of the mold is blocking it, it makes sure that it's not going to leak. Of course, still be careful, but I'm going to pop any surface bubbles that are in there. The best part about potions is you really don't have to worry about bubbles because they're going to look really cool. Alright,
Oh, yeah.
and we just let that cool, and we'll grab our next color. So really, there's just so many ways that you can customize this to different colors, to different shapes. Now we're going to pour the clear in the top of these two bottles. So I'll pour it in the jar here. Alright, and then we'll pour a little bit more into the jade bottle. And this I'm going to pour all the way to the top. So this kind of emulates the glass on top of the bottle. So the glass bottle that's empty, or the section of it that's empty, where the potion doesn't fill up to. That's kind of what we do with the clear. So it just looks like glass. You could even let the first color cool and then fill and drain this top layer of glass if you wanted it to look hollow, so it actually looked open. But we're going to be putting corks in the top of these. Just pop this little bubble that's sitting on the surface there. We're going to be putting corks in these, so I actually want it to be solid across the top. Plus, when it's solid, it can be torched on the outside, and then it's going to just give you an even better glassy look. Alright, perfect. Everybody doing okay? Anybody got any questions? I am loving all the different ideas, and I cannot wait to see them come to life. Alright. See, Terry said, on the potion bottle, you added eyes by layer, then poured more over eyes. Yes. So I added them halfway. So I poured a little bit on each half of the mold, and kind of rolled it to coat the sides of the molds. And then I put the eyes in, face out. Let that cool, put it together, and then I poured little bits of Isomalt and then added more eyes and then more Isomalt and eyes until we filled up the whole cavity of the mold. Alright. So we are going to let those cool. They are going to take a little while to cool. I'm hoping that that will be cool enough to take out by the end of the demo. So I'm going to keep rotating it in front of this fan and get it nice and cooled, but we at least have the little one too, which won't take as long. If you were pouring it all liquid, the big mold would probably take around 45 minutes or so because it is just solid liquid. But because we put those cold eyeballs in it and it filled out some of the space, it's not going to take quite as much time to take out. So the small one is going to be a little bit different because it is smaller. So it's probably going to take maybe, I don't know, 20-30 minutes for it to cool all the way. But hopefully, because it is quite cold in here, we will be able to rush that a little bit today to have it open by the end of the demo. All right, and the same with the test tube, the same as the small one.
Tina says yuck, roach mold.
Super yuck. All right, so we have a couple other things to do while those are cooling to start making our different decorations and, you know, just some different design ideas for the pieces. Plus, we will pour this test tube, the other half of it, in a little while once that's cool. All right, so let's grab our jade. I'm going to put that in the microwave. Okay, we're going to make some bubbles for our bubbling beaker. And I'll also show you how I did the poured section of the test tube as well. So this color that we're going to use next, if you want to add bubbles to any of your beakers, really easy bubbles, you can use whatever color that you have the potion. So if your potion is amber, if your potion is blue or purple or pink, you can use whatever color that you have. I'm going to do the jade green, since I have that right here. All right. Now, of course, you could do something like using a sphere mold, or even the eye molds that are just solid in one color if you wanted to make little round domes or spheres. You can also use blown bubbles, so if you want to make tiny little blown bubbles. A couple years ago, I did a cauldron Isomalt kind of plaque, and I did tiny little blown bubbles all over it, bubbling out, which is really cute. So you can definitely do that, but another way that you can do it is just by pouring them. So this is kind of the really simple, easy version of that.
Amy had a good question.
Yeah.
If you want to put a fondant piece in the jar, should the ice melt be partially cool like it is with the eyeballs?
The cooler it is, the better. I find it causes the less bubbles and it just holds up the best. But as long as the fondant is dry, even if you can add a little bit of Tylose or a lot of Tylose into the fondant to help it be a little bit harder, it generally holds fine over the top of it. The only thing that could happen is if the ice melt is really hot, I find that the colors can bleed a little bit into each other. It almost like takes the moisture and absorbs the moisture out of the fondant, and it can make it a little bit sticky inside, or it can make it so the colors bleed. So the cooler the ice melt is, the better for sure.
It doesn't really have that trouble with the dried royal icing, though.
No, I think because so much of the moisture is gone from it, whereas fondant has that marshmallow, so it retains more. Gum paste is kind of the same thing. It's almost like an in-between where there's not as much moisture in it when it's totally dry. Don't pour it over chocolate, though, because it will melt chocolate. All right. So we're going to add our, or pour our bubbles out onto the mat. So I'm just using my silicone mat here. For small things, it's usually fine to pour right onto the silicone mats. They stay nice and flat for just little pieces. You could also pour over a non-stick baking liner sheet like our gold ones that we have, or you can use aluminum foil as well. So you can use regular aluminum foil that's been greased with a really light layer of cooking spray, or you can use non-stick aluminum foil, and that does not have to be greased, but it has to be specifically the non-stick kind of aluminum foil. Okay, and that's really easy to pour out onto as well. So I'm just going to pour some little drops. You can do this by hand, so you can see I'm just using my bowl and letting them kind of be the size that they want. I usually like a variation of sizes and shapes anyway, but they all should be fairly round. If you feel like you're accidentally pouring too much or that's just a little bit too tedious, you can also use your tool and just kind of collect some. This is really good for smaller bubbles especially. I just dip them. The silicone tools that we have also have a scoop tool on one end, so you can use that to help hold a little bit more on the end. But I find that once you do this a couple times, the tool grabs more of the ice malt. But you can see you can get really tiny with these. And I'm just kind of going in like a circular motion to help it drop off the top. Okay. And I just make a bunch of different sizes of these. I usually go kind of bubble crazy when I do stuff like this because I love the full bubbling look, especially because these are more 2D than doing a sphere or a blown bubble. I find that the more full you can make it, the cooler the effect is. But you'll also want some bigger ones too. So I'm just going to pour a couple of big ones as well. When the ice malt is hotter, it works better for this. The little ones sometimes can be easier when the ice malt's thick. But if it's too thick, then you're going to get lots of strings and it's not going to form perfectly to a circle. Like I can see that one just kind of went a little more oval. So I'll just guide it around a little bit with my tool. Kind of like using a cookie scribe with icing. Okay, and the best part is you can always throw these back in the bowl. So if there's too many of them or you didn't end up liking some of the shapes of them, all you have to do is throw it back in and remelt it. Alright, So you can see I have some little bubbles there, and that will be perfect. I did add a little bit of shading on the ones that I put on the jar. So it's going to have a little white highlight using my base white, and then I did a little bit of dark green Simi color splash around them just to add some shading so that they really popped from each other. So I just edged it in that dark green and then added the white. Because this is kind of a cartoony look to these potion bottles, that's why I wanted to have the cartoony sort of shading on them. And I think it really just added another level of interest. Alright. The test tube should be cool enough to pour now. So I'll remelt my clear. Okay, we're gonna pull this away and just use a clean end of our tool to make sure it doesn't feel liquid. It's still a little bit warm, but it's not liquid enough that it's gonna slump. And now when we put these together, you see how a little bit of it is covered, but there's enough open that we can fill in with clear. And the reason that I only did a little bit and not filling up the entire half of the mold is just because when I do mine, it kind of spilled out. So a lot of it's already gone. I didn't want it to look full and spilling out at the same time because I feel like if it was sitting there and a lot of the potion had poured out, then it wouldn't really be that full. So that's why I only filled mine maybe like a fourth or a third of the way of the whole piece when it's put together. So we'll grab some more rubber bands. Keep rotating our bottle. Rotate our little one too. And just make sure it's all sitting up straight. All the seams are aligned. There we go. And we're just going to pour the rest of the way up with our clear Isomalt so it just looks like the glass. Nice and slow. Alright. And they'll just kind of slowly melt together and bond together, so you don't really have to worry about doing anything else. I do just want to make sure they're filled up to the same level. So I just fill it all the way to the tippy top. I might torch over it a little bit just to help it all sort of mesh together and to pop any bubbles that are there. Okay, and we'll put that one off to the side. But when that one pops out, it looks pretty much how it looks on this finished one, where it has that really cool line between the two colors when you look at it from the side, but then when you look at it from the top, it sort of reflects and amplifies that light. So I just think that's such a cool effect, because depending on where you're looking at it from the piece, you're going to get kind of a different experience with it. Okay. Put this one back here. So we can check on our little bubbles now, because they don't take very long at all to cool. I just tapped them with a silicone tool or a toothpick. Don't use your finger, just in case they were still liquidy. And then I just popped them right off of the mat. And they just come out really, really cute. And you can use, like I said, as many of them as you want. Sometimes you have to kind of start with however many you want to make, and then you can always add more later if you're not quite sure. I always end up doing that because, like I said, I always like more and more bubbles. I can't stop myself when it comes to bubbles. Super cute. This one came out a little bit funky, so I'm not going to use that one. I'm going to probably throw it back. But sometimes you need like filler pieces too. Sometimes you need to add ones on top of other ones. So maybe I'll keep it just in case I need to layer some other ones on top of it just to add some kind of depth to push the bubbles out from the piece a little bit. Alright, so let's see how these are doing. Good. That one should be cool pretty soon. This one's going to take a little bit longer, but we still have some more decorations to make. Keep rotating that a little. Alright, so as far as the outsides of the bottles, once they are cool, there's lots and lots of different ways that you can decorate them. So you could hand paint on them if you wanted to. Pretty much anything sticks to Isomalt, so if you wanted to paint on a design by hand, you can use gel colors thin down. You can airbrush, you can use stencils, and you can decorate them that way. You can also use stencils or just hand pipe buttercream or royal icing or chocolate over top of them. Royal icing and chocolate work the best with Isomalt just because they are going to dry out completely and be really solid. So those look really nice. You can also dust them. Now, luster dust dry will stick because they are a little bit tacky naturally, but petal dust you have to mix with something, so you can mix any of the dust with alcohol or piping gel or something to add a little bit of stickiness and body to them, and you could decorate them that way if you wanted to. Or you can add edible images. So you can add an image directly to the bottle if you wanted to, but I really didn't want to cover up the bottles because, especially with this one, we have the eyes, but with the other ones we have kind of the cool different layers of colors. So instead of just sticking it to the side like I would a beer bottle, I took the labels and I added a little string to them, so they kind of look like they're a little bit more handmade, like maybe the potions, you know, were mixed by hand and added the little labels onto it, and it just looks kind of more rustic. So I will show you how we're going to do that. Okay, so first off we have our labels. Now you can use whatever kinds of labels that you want, but I did create this kind of compilation of some creepy labels. So we have bat wings, we have poison, witch's brew, crow's foot, black cat hisses, spider juice, just a whole bunch of different ones. This is just a half sheet, but we have the full sheet, and then also the half sheet came in the kit if you got the accessory kit for this project. So you have some more options there. But this is the one that I wanted to use. There's a whole bunch of different sizes in there. I use the smallest ones mostly, unless I'm going for a bigger jar. But I just pre-cut a few of these out, and they are on icing sheets again, so you can peel them off the backing before you cut them out, or after you cut them out, and then they're going to be freestanding, so they're really durable, and they'll hold up nicely and look just like paper. These are icing images. They're my favorite brand of edible paper. That's all we use, is icing images for edible paper, so we have those that are ready to go. Okay, and I'm going to use a hole punch to cut out just a hole for the string to go in, so just towards the top. Just a tiny little hole, either in the corner or the center. I did the center just because these are a little more delicate, so you don't want them to rip by being in the corner. By putting it in the center, it just kind of adds a little more stability to it. This is just a regular hole punch. And then to create the caps and everything, we are going to use fondant or gum paste. Either way will work. Or you can use modeling chocolate even. You could do whatever colors you want for this. If you want to go really more like rustic, very sort of cottage looking, you can do more like browns or marbleized tan colors, or even paint it afterwards. I wanted to go for a little bit darker, a little bit spookier, so I actually have my leftover fondant from when we did the realistic Isomalt watch playdate. Do you guys remember that? In, I think it was June's playdate. But what we did is we coated the black fondant with base white, Simi color splash color. So we actually took some of the color, we coated around the top of it in little pieces, and then we mushed it all together and rolled it out, and it created this really cool variegated effect. I had some of that left over, and I just loved like the really pretty crackles that you get. And I always like to try and, you know, reuse pieces and, you know, extra product as well, because I don't want to waste anything. Plus, you get some really cool effects, too, from just having this all squished together. So I'm using my leftover. I'm going to kind of soften this a little bit before I make it, but you don't want to mix it up too much because then it'll break up the color. You can also just use marbleized fondant or gum paste or modeling chocolate, so just take a couple colors or take a little bit of gel color mixed into them to create a marbleized effect as well. But if you want to see more intricately how I did that, you can check out after this my Playdate, and I have it as pre-recorded videos on my Instagram and my YouTube as well, so you can go back and check those out. It's the variegated marble technique. I did this with some pinks and oranges too when we did back in the spring. We did our flower power cake with the Isomalt cutout windows. Alright, so again, I don't want to completely knead this together. I just kind of am squishing it back and forth to get it a little bit more reanimated so it's soft. And then you can do this after the jars come out if you want to for size, but I'm just going to roll a ball like that. And then I pick which side is the prettiest with the variegation for the cork, and I'm just going to flatten it. I don't want it super flat, and I may even use my mat to give me a flatter edge, but I'm just going to make sort of a really thick pancake. I may even roll it on its sides to create a slightly sharper edge, so I'm rolling it like a wheel. See how that just creates a really pretty variegation in there? Okay. So that's how I do the corks, and I would just have them kind of sitting on the top of the jars that are closed. I'm just going to hold that up to the piece. I don't like them too small because then I don't think they look as realistic, so I try and make them almost as wide as the mouth of the bottle. And they're pretty flat too because they wouldn't be sticking out very much if they are closed, if they're corked in there. So this one's maybe, it's less than ½ an inch high. Okay, and I'll make a little one as well. Sometimes I pick the place that has the best variegation whenever I use marbleized fondants because I can kind of just roll that into a ball, even if it has some texture, because this is a little bit on the drier side since I've had it for a while, and it's also, because I'm not really kneading it to get it smooth and soft, it has a little bit of like crackled and dry texture to it, but I actually think that's perfect for the cork, isn't it? Alright, so I'm doing the same thing for the little bottle. I'm not going to do one for the test tube because that one is open, right? It's spilling. Okay. So just rolling those edges again. And I'm just sizing it to that jar. So it's a little bit smaller than the opening. And we'll put those off to the side for now until we need them. Okay, we're also going to use this to make the string for the label, but of course that has to happen once they're already out, so I'm not going to make that quite yet so that they don't dry. Okay. So let's put our bubbles off to the side, and our little jar should be ready to unmold. We'll give the big one just a little bit longer. All right. So once that is cool, we're going to take off rubber bands from the outside. The two sides that have the seams going down them, you kind of want to press down and away from those two seams, and that's going to help it to release. And look how cool that looks. We got a really, really neat sort of layered texture there, and we do have a little bit of bubbliness on the surface from the silicone breathing, but I don't think that looks bad. I think it actually adds to the piece a lot because it makes it look a little bit more weathered, but you can torch that away using your torch if you would like to make it super clear and glassy like I have for the other one. You can see here is totally smooth. Okay. Alright, this is still a tiny bit warm in the center and I don't want it to warp, so one trick that I have if you accidentally unmold it a little bit too early is to open up the half. You can put the mold back together, but if it's not quite to that point, you can just set it in front of the fan open and it helps to cool it down. Okay, so in the meantime, I will paint a little bit of detail on my bubbles, and then that should be cool enough to come out. So I'm going to take a little bit of my Simi Color Splash Base White, and I'm going to mix that with just a drop or two of the dilution solution to make it a little thinner and paint on a little bit smoother. So we'll just do a couple drops of white, a couple drops of clear. Grab a little paintbrush, mix those together. Okay, and I'm just going to add kind of a C shape onto my bubble, just slightly in from the edge. Sometimes I go over that once or twice just to make sure that it's going to be a nice opaque color. With the base white, as you can see, even thinned down, it looks pretty solid, but as it dries, if you notice that it gets a little bit more translucent or you just want it to pop even more, I'll just add another coat. But by adding that dilution solution in, it just makes it paint on really smooth. So I do like to work with it a little more diluted and layer it compared to working with it straight out of the bottle for some hand painting things, because sometimes it doesn't paint quite as smooth if you are doing details. If you're just coating a whole piece, it works great. But for little details and skinny, thin, fine lines, we do want it to paint on pretty cleanly. That's the best part about the base white and the color splash, is that they're customizable, so you can kind of change it up depending on what you are doing and what project you're working on. That way you don't have to go from paint to paint to get different thicknesses and opacities. I'm just doing tiny, tiny little details on the other ones. Okay, I'm even going to add it to this kind of weird shaped one, because again, I'm going to use that probably for some layering. Okay, you can do this after it's all put together as well. You don't have to do it before. Okay, yeah, that feels like it's doing better. Alright, here's our jar. Looks really cool. I might have distorted it a little bit, but that's actually another technique that you can do, is actually take them out early and stretch them and distort them. I know Mitchie from Mitchie's Munchies, she does that with a lot of the bottles to make them kind of twisted and super creepy potion bottle looking, so those look really neat as well. And then if we do want to get rid of that bubbliness, all we're going to do is torch over the surface. And you may have to do this in layers, but it's just going to make it super crystal clear, just like it did for the eyes. Alright, so just cooling that down a little bit. Yep, our jar should be good in just a few minutes, so we'll decorate this one and then we'll pull that one out. Okay. So you can see just how shiny that made the bottle compared to the bubbly texture that it started out with. It makes it look super duper real. Okay. Right. Now let's go ahead and add the string on and the cap as well. Now Isomalt and fondant and gum paste and even modeling chocolate don't really need a lot of glue to stick them together, because it's going to stick really easily just by itself. But if you needed a little glue, you can use some piping gel or some chocolate. But I'm just going to kind of smush that on there. I would torch the whole entire thing. I'm just not going to make you guys watch me do that. But I normally would go over the entire thing to make sure the back of it is clear as well. Now I'm going to take a little bit of my leftover fondant, squish it just a little bit, and kind of roll it to warm it up. Okay, and you're not going to need very much of this. You want the string to be small enough to thread through. Okay, oops, throwing my little drips around. Alright, then the fun part is picking out which of our labels that we want to use. I think I want to use, let's do the poison label. Okay, so I'm going to thread that through and just wrap it around the top. So again, a lot of times those don't even need any glue to stick them on. So I'm just wrapping it around. Super duper cute. And then if you want to add some bubbles, you can. This one I did do closed because I did a cap, so the bubbles wouldn't necessarily be spilling out the top, but maybe it has, you know, a little residue on the side or something like that. We can put some bubbles, like maybe it was just corked again and some of it sloshed over. So if you want to do that, you can either use liquid Isomalt as a glue, or you can just warm the bottle and stick the bubbles right down into it. And I kind of like to layer them at different depths. So I'll stack some kind of over other ones. You might want to use tweezers for these because they're so tiny. But we'll add just kind of like some little suds going down the side. And I'm going a little bit faster than this than I normally would. I usually let them cool all the way in between each of these steps, but there is our cute little potion bottle. Isn't that awesome? I love how it came out with the green and the mini bottle too. I really like that color combo. Looks very, very spooky. Alright. Put that off to the side. Alright, so let's check on our eye jar. I don't know if it'll be totally cool enough for me to take out all the way, but I'm at least going to take out one side so that you can see the end result. Okay, so I'm just going to take the rubber bands off, remove our sleeve. Yeah, he's still a little bit wobbly, but we're going to make it work, right? Okay. And there we go. Look how awesome that looks with the eyes just kind of sunken in there. Isn't that neat? So you can see when you rotate it, because we put them at different sort of angles and levels, they just look like they're looking in all sorts of different directions. And when you look at it from the bottom and the top as well, it doesn't just look like they end in the center. There actually is some down in the center of it, not just at the edges. So we get a really cool look. Isn't that awesome? So obviously let that cool all the way down before you take the bubbles off of it and put the label and everything onto it. But once it is completely cool, you're going to have your jar that's nice and crystal clear here. And I lost my little label when I was traveling with this one, so we are going to put a label back onto here. I'm just going to kind of cut this label since it already has a string and just position the label around it. Okay, so see how I just kind of put a cut in the label, and then I'll use a little bit of piping gel or something on that just to help it stick on. But there is our eye jar all finished. We have our little green potion jar as well all finished. I just love it with the cap. You can really see the cap on this one too, and how that pretty sort of crackly looks with the marbleized fondant on top. You can go back and texture it with like some foil or something too if you want to. And then of course we also have our spilled out guy there, our test tube. We got our potion jar. And then I have my other ones here too. So the finished look of kind of the layered ones with the darker colors looks really neat. So that one I did like a dark blue and a clear. This one I did sort of like a reddish maroon color. Okay, and then added the same caps and strings onto those. Isn't that neat? You can see my eye jar is definitely getting whimsical right now because it is kind of melted, but I actually really like that shape. Isn't that cool? It sort of looks like a whiskey bottle or something. We might have just invented a new kind of bottle there, guys. All right. Do you guys have any questions or anything like that? Let me know. I'm going to turn this back up. All right.
Said I've heard of a worm at the bottom of the whiskey bottle.
Oh,
but
yeah.
Not an eyeball.
Yeah, not so much an eyeball. I think I would freak out if I saw an eyeball in my bottle.
And tequila, right?
Oh, yeah, and tequila. All right, so I hope you guys enjoyed that. I love seeing and hearing all of your different variations, and I can't wait to see them come to life. Super creepy. We still got a couple more weeks till Halloween, so definitely be trying out some different kinds of bottles and post them to the Twitch team, or to tag me in them too, because I would love to see it and reshare them. I do have a couple of announcements before we go about the next project that we have, and also some other fun things that are happening this month. So first off, we are going to be going to Cake International in the UK at the end of the month. Yay! I cannot wait to see, excuse me, all of our, losing my voice. All of our friends in the UK when we go. So if you're going to be there, make sure to stop by. We'll be with Dinky Doodle. We'll have the Simi Cakes booth with Dinky Doodle, and so make sure to stop by. But that being said, we are going to be away until the 15th. So if you need anything from our website, we're not going to be able to ship. The web store will still be open so you can order, but it's not going to be processed or shipped until we get back after the 15th. So if you need anything, make sure to get it within the next week or so, and as long as we have it in stock, we'll be able to get it out to you before we go. But you can always shoot me a message too to make sure we have anything in stock that you're planning on ordering. So that is definitely something to keep in mind. I'm losing my voice now. Sorry about that, guys. One moment. Oh, good. I'm so glad you guys like that. Rebecca said so much fun. Jessiane said lots of ideas. Definitely lots of ideas. All right, and then also please remember that the Nicholas Lodge store is open, so please support the Nicholas Lodge legacy because Scott does have the online store open, so definitely make sure that you check that out. They actually compiled all of the Flower Pro videos and PDFs into collections that just came out, so there's a spring, a summer, and then a winter fall kind of combined together. So make sure that you check that out and support the shop, because we all want to support Scott as much as we can right now, and he does have the web store open. So
Nicholas Lodge.
NicholasLodge.com, and that will support the Nicholas Lodge legacy and keep Flower Pro and all of that amazing information out there. So I just wanted to make sure to remind you guys, because it is open. Some people were asking, is the store open or not, to be able to receive orders, and it is. So make sure that you definitely support that. Yay! Tina said yay for Nicholas Lodge Flower Power. Definitely. Terry said, I missed the live pumpkin class. Is the link posted somewhere? Yes, you can go back. If you were a part of the class, you should have it, the link in your email. We emailed it out. If you didn't, let me know. And then we also have the class available for purchase as well on the website now, the pre-recorded version. All right.
Terry should have gotten an email.
Okay, yeah. So if you didn't get the email, check your spam folder, because sometimes it goes there too. But if you didn't get it, I'll send you the, or we'll send you the link to the class. Let's see what else we got going on. We do have 2 discounts going on in the Torch team right now, so make sure that you check your codes. We started November's a little bit early for all of our edible sheets, so that way, since we're gone for 2 of the weeks of the month, you get 2 weeks on this side of the month. So make sure you check that out. The next live demo that we have going on the Simi Cakes page is going to be Heather Salmon. She's going to be demonstrating something spooky and amazing on October 23rd, so make sure that you tune in for that on the Simi Cakes page here, the same page. And Terry said just look for the email. Thank you. Okay, awesome. And then we do have a couple of new seasonal colors that are going to be coming out. Alex is working hard on some beautiful colors that are coming out in the next week or 2, so make sure you keep your eyes peeled, because he has some really beautiful winter colors that are coming out. You may recognize one of them, and then another one that is brand new. So we'll have those coming up very, very soon. I'll have more info on that. And the next month's Playdate, we do have a November Playdate. Because we're going to be gone, we're not having a Zoom class for November, but we are having a really cool Playdate. And the next thing that we're going to be making is very seasonal and very festive. I have them, oh, they're on the spray table. Could you grab those for me?
You trust me?
I trust you, I do.
No way.
Alright. So the next project that we're going to be doing is going to be a whole bunch of different decorations and lollipops, all within a very festive theme. So we actually have a brand new mold that I'm so excited to show you. This one is very, very cool. So the theme, of course, is going to be holiday and very festive, and it is, let me grab this here, our new candy mold. Let me hold that kind of over a dark surface so you can see it. Look how cool this mold is. So Mom created this new candy mold that works perfect in Isomalt. This one I put some sprinkles in. We're also going to use it in conjunction with our shaker maker as well to create some really cool shaker lollipops. So we have that one there as well, perfect for the holidays, so pretty. So we're going to be creating these, and then we also have some new patterns. Not only is the candy pattern now, I kind of tweaked it a little bit to be the size of our shaker instead of the larger candy pattern, so you get more on the sheet that way. But we also have these really cute wreath designs that I just finished, and see if you can see them. It's a little bit of a busy background for them because they are on cello sheets, but they're these really pretty wreaths, and they have some festive words in there. I know it's backwards, but that one says joy. We have be merry, and then we also have merry and bright, and I turned them into little wreath lollipops, so we're going to be creating those for the next play date, as well as some cute little candy lollipops. These ones I wrapped up and I added little bow ties to the bottom of them instead. So we're going to have tons of fun. These are perfect for dessert tables, perfect for decorations in cakes, because I love the look of cakes with lollipops sticking out. I just think that that's so pretty and whimsical. So we're going to be going over a whole bunch of different ways to use that brand new mold that we have. This is the mold here, and I'm so excited about that because there's so many ways you can use it. Like I said, on its own, with the shaker, with the flat lollies, there's so many ways that you can use this mold. So I'm excited to show you how to do that in our next playdate, which is going to be on November 19th, I believe. I'm pretty sure. I forgot to write the date down, but I'm pretty sure it's the 19th, whatever that Saturday is. Yeah, the 19th. And there is an accessory kit available with the new mold discounted, as well as the Isomalt and the patterns. So those cello sheets will be in the discounted kit as well. So if you want to get the new ones, now is the time to snag it while we have that discounted kit. Yes, the mold is on the website now, and the kit is on the website now as well. So I'll post about it in the Torch team and on my page afterwards too for the link, but if you go and look, it should be in the categories there for you to check out. So super excited to show you guys all the different ways that I use this, and we'll apply that to other molds too, how you can kind of, dissect them and use them in different ways. So
And that is the Torch Team game, right, this month?
That is the Torch Team game, yes. Thank you for reminding me. We have the Torch Team game going on in our group, and so don't forget to enter that for a chance to win a really cool prize, and it's basically using your Simi molds in different ways. So if you've ever used them for like shapes that they're not necessarily going to be meant for, that it ended up working out perfectly, maybe you dissected it and used different parts of the mold for different things, maybe you used kind of an unconventional medium in them, like a clay or ice or something, or butter, or different things like that. And then out of that, everybody who enters with the hashtag, all the info is in the group, we have one person will be randomly selected for a prize, and this month we have, oops, sorry, it's super long, we have this really cool, what does he call these, kitchen boa? Kitchen boa. So from Swanky Stitches, Wayne Steinkoff creates these. Look how cute they are. So it actually goes around your neck, and then you can use it for, like taking pans out of the oven, and use the towels on the end of it too. And it just creates like a really, really cool, useful tool. So we will have that as the prize for this month. So make sure that you enter. Show us how you use your Simi molds in different ways. All the details for that is in the pinned post in the Torch Team.
Or join the Torch Team.
Yeah, or join the Torch Team if you're not a part of it. The Simi Torch Team is awesome. It's the best Facebook group, but I'm a little bit biased. And we have tons of Isomalt and just sugar in general fun in there. No drama, super, super fun. Everybody is so amazing on there, so lots of inspiration. All right, perfect. Well, thank you guys so much for joining me today for this live demo. I hope that you enjoyed it and got lots of ideas. I cannot wait to see all of your potion bottles, because I know you guys are going to make some super creepy, awesome ones. So make sure to tag me or to post them in the Torch Team with all the different things that you put inside the jars and your different experiments. I know I feel a little bit like a mad scientist creating these sometimes, so now we actually get to make our mad scientist potions and concoctions and brews. So I hope that you guys enjoyed. Have a great rest of your Sunday.
Is it today's Saturday?
Oh, today's Saturday. Sorry, I'm so used to it being Sunday. Have a great rest of your Saturday and your weekend. All right, and we will see you guys next time. Bye. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Happy Halloween.